I read the paper this morning, and in the Frederick News Post, in the opinion and contemporary section, there's always a debate between two articles. And this one's titled, Fuels Economy. I read a good bit about the economy, and I promise you I don't understand any of it. This is a quote from one of those arguments. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, tens of millions struggle to put food on the table, find affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable prescription drugs, affordable child care, and affordable educational opportunities. Unquote. Who might have said that this past week in New Hampshire? Not one of the Republican candidates, I can assure you that. Our old friend Bernie Sanders. I don't know what Bernie's running for, but he's always said this. He, in a sense, nailed what I wanted to try to say. And then this morning on one of my daily web posts that I get from Heather Cox Richardson, she says this. She said on March 4, 1858, a South Carolina Senator, James Henry Hammond, rose to his feet to explain to the Senate of the United States how society worked. He says, in all social systems, there must be a class to do menial duties, to perform the drudgery of life. And also, he said, that class needed little intelligence, little skill, but it should be strong, docile, and loyal. James Henry Hammond went on to say that such a class must have, or you would not hope that other civilization, that's not. Such a class you must have, or you would not have that other class, which leads progress and civilization and refinement. His workers were the mudsill on which society rested. The enslaved. The mudsill is like the migrant workers who come to this country that we claim we don't want, but we can't live without, because they will do that kind of work. I want to explore the nature of our work in our society, and even though many people don't earn a living wage, they work. They do honest, important work, digging in the ground, mowing lawns, making beds in hospitals and hotels, picking and packing our fruit and vegetables, cashiering, collecting garbage, etc., etc. And then there are the professional careers with benefits and career paths and retirement plans. So-called important work that sustains and enhances our lives. Teachers, nurses, accountants, ministers, chefs, project managers, IT programmers. And then there are doctors and lawyers and corporate executives and the CEOs of companies that make 400 times more than the people who work on their production lines and create the products that they sell to the world. And of course, there are those who play games and sports. And don't forget the TV entertainers and movie stars. 25-year-old Victor Hovland, just a couple Sundays ago, won $18 million for a golf match in completing has championed the 2023 FedEx tournament. The writer of Ecclesiastes asks some similar questions about work and toil. What gain have the workers from their toil? The writer answers the question this way: I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. Then this, God has made everything suitable for its time. Now, I am certain there are many in the world, some right here in our own community, who would take issue with this statement from Ecclesiastes, with this idea that God has given everyone work to do. Some do not have, for all sorts of reasons, good ones and bad ones, something to be busy with. Just come to the church here during the week and go down to the basement and chat with the guest hosted by the Salvation Army. By the way, if you will check our homepage of our website today, you will find a very positive article written from the Osherman Foundation newsletter that supports the Salvation Army and Grace Church. And you would find a very, very glowing, important, impressive article about the work that we do together to support those who live on the edge. There is more to challenge in this text from Ecclesiastes. Verse 13, it says, "It is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in their toil." Let me ask you, how much pleasure are you experiencing in your work? How much pleasure are you experiencing being the organist and the music director? How much pleasure am I experiencing being the interim pastor? How much pleasure are you experiencing in your work? How much pleasure did you achieve and experience before you retired? I've heard many people who retired, God, I can't wait. Why can't you wait? Well, I've hated this job for 40 years. But I always went to work on time. I did what I was supposed to do. And now I can do whatever I want to do if you got enough money in retirement to do that. Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove, who's a homegrown North Carolina evangelical teacher and preacher. He writes books about racism, about the moral movement in North Carolina to overcome the discrimination and oppressive nature of our economy for those in the bottom 20% of the population. And he asked the hard and relevant question about the value we place on work performed by the working poor, by undocumented immigrants and the incarcerated in this country. He says the low value we place on their labor is what's wrong with our economy. He also says the inequality of global capitalism, which is the outgrowth of plantation capitalism, depends in part on keeping our distance from the people who bear the brunt of it. It also depends on the narratives we've created about those people as the undeserving poor. In the current conservative Christian community, the common belief that I grew up with is that people are poor because they lack a work ethic. That poverty is not a matter of character, or the lack of it, or choice. There's an insight that comes credit to W.B. Bat Masterson. You know, remember who he was? the buffalo hunter, turned Wild West lawman, turned hard-drinking gambler, ended up as a pal of Theodore Roosevelt, and died a famous New York sports writer. Only in America. This insight that he shares goes like this. Everyone gets the same amount of ice. The wealthy get their ice in the summer, and the poor get their ice in the winter. The United Way of Frederick, of Maryland, has a wonderful model that they've developed, helping us to go deeper in our understanding of the working poor, those who get their ice in the winter. The model is called ALICE, and ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. Asset limited, income constrained, employed. Folks who earn above the federal poverty level. And the federal poverty level these days is for a single person is about $14,500 annually. For a family of two, $19,720. For a family of four, around $30,000. But not nearly enough to afford the basics where they live, in Frederick County included. Housing, childcare, food, transportation, health care, a smartphone, which used to be a luxury, but it seems like everybody needs one, and to pay their taxes. In Frederick County, there are 37,000, or 36% of our population falls in ALICE. That's significant, plus the percent that's below the federal poverty level. Don't you imagine they might take issue with the idea that God gives them what they need to be happy, to eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil? Now, Matthew this morning in chapter 16 calls us to deny ourselves and take up the cross of Jesus and follow him. In a very specific sense, my friends, this is God's call to us to ensure that we can experience the joy of our toil, to share our resources and assets so that all can know the joy of God's gift to us. America's generosity in times of crisis is one of the most admirable qualities of this country. Less admirable is the widespread tendency to see money, and lots of it, as a virtue. And on the flip side, to see poverty as an emblem of weakness. The mom on minimum wage who gets her child to school with clean clothes and homework finished on time is accomplishing a most difficult task. Surviving poverty with dignity and integrity is harder than surviving wealth. It is more expensive to be poor in this country than it is to be wealthy. Surviving poverty with dignity and integrity is harder than surviving wealth. And those who manage to overcome poverty to arrive at prosperity are, as Abraham Lincoln observed, the very people on whom our future depends. It is on the tired backs of the poor that the heaviest burdens of wildfires and hurricanes and war land. And may the sympathy we feel for them in this hour and the moments of disaster around the world be something special that we offer, our respect. Jesus had some very different things to say from those of James Henry Hammond in 1858. In chapter 25 of Matthew's Gospel, if you remember, Jesus would be found as we would be, as we are called to deny ourselves and our refined life and be like Jesus. We would be found with the least of these, not with the most of these. We would be defined by the way we treat the poor, the vulnerable, and the imprisoned. May, as a church, as a people of faith, come to terms with who we are called to serve and how we are called to do that. May it be so for you and for me this day. Amen.